All right, let's step it up. Let's get to radical non-duality. I think Jim is a great example of the philosophy or the method of radical non-duality. And the method seems pretty straightforward. You continuously point out, like if we were just talking right now, you would continuously point out to me that everything that I'm doing right now is thinking. Well, that's just a thought. That's a thought. That's a thought. Um, and obviously, it can be pretty effective, you know? It reminds me of the Seinfeld episode where, George and Jerry are trying to propose a show about nothing. And George is very, that's his method. He's like, it's about nothing. It's about nothing. And anytime someone came along and said, well, it's about something, no, he redirected and said it's about nothing. And that's the kind of take I got from this method. And obviously, it's a good one in the sense that people are using it. It's a great way to demind yourself and to recognize thoughts. You know, if you have a teacher around who's continuously reminding you or deminding you that that's a thought, that's a thought, you know nothing because your collection of thoughts is what you think is knowledge, but it's just one way of viewing the world, and it's largely an illusion. And that creates the illusion that there's something to do and that there's some progress that could be made towards liberation. When, again, all these thoughts simply think that they're not liberated and there's something to do, and liberation has already happened. So, liberation is uh, not a process, it's nothing you have to do except to recognize that thoughts are simply that. They are thoughts. And so when you take it on that level, I think it would help. I think anyone who had a teacher around them, deminding them every time they got caught up in the thinking, it would become a habit to recognize thoughts as simply thoughts. So the third question I proposed is, are we ready for non-duality? Well, obviously, some people uh, are. I mean, we can show that by it's self-evident that they seem to be. Is that going to be something that is, available for everyone? Um, you imagine someone who is having a panic attack, and you walk up and you say, "Look, it's just your thoughts." Um, is that radical non-duality? Is that just simply just pointing out, like, look, you're just thinking right now? Um, it's to say, if someone's really caught up in a movie, you can really shake them and just like, it's just a movie, and they're so caught up in it, it may not actually ever work because they don't want it to work. And so, um, in his conversation and Jim's conversation with Sam, I thought it was kind of interesting because Sam seemed to pick up pretty early that thought is on trial. And the interesting thing about thinking is the only thing it has to support itself is itself. The only way I can justify you that thinking is a good way to live your life is by using the thought process itself. And Sam actually recognizes right early in the conversation. He's like, look, he said something like, I know I'm on a tight wire and I'll probably fall. And so he recognized that thinking is going to fail when you're having a conversation with someone who has recognized that there's more to consciousness than simply thought. And there's no way to support thinking outside of the thought process itself. So once I mean, it's like a house of cards, the whole thing collapses. And of course, along with all the thinking is the notion of the self, because the self is just another thought. So obviously, some people, again, that's not even the way you would word it, because radical non-duality would never, acknowledge the individual existence as anything else than a mere illusion. But obviously, it seems to be something that's popping up. And I think it is something that seems to be there's a bit of a trend. And I think this is kind of has some momentum to it. And I think it is tied in more with the kind of blessedness or the peacefulness that one gets when they're not thinking. And so I watched a few of these, and it was kind of a fun little hour or something where I just didn't think. And there is a very pleasant experience in non-thinking. And it's rare to have thoughts that are equally pleasant. When you get into the thinking mode, it's all about strategy. So it all becomes about winning and losing and playing the game. And in fact, in my other video, when I talked about the adventure of the hero, that's what thinking is all about. And so there are winners and there are losers, and it's a grand adventure. And there is something to that. There must be, or else we wouldn't be doing it, which we are. But so, I don't know if we're ready collectively for non-duality. But of course, um, the position of radical non-duality would say that question is absolutely meaningless. We're already liberated. There's nothing more than just the thought that we're not.